Welcome back to your local news. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Caitlin.
And today we're going to talk about the Harvey Weinstein scandal. Harvey Weinstein, esteemed Hollywood media mogul and film producer, has recently been the subject of extensive criminal investigation and subsequently been fired from his company, as well as expelled from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. These consequences have arisen as a result of a multitude of sexual assault allegations filed by over 80 different women, including Hollywood actresses, models, and even subordinates from his own companies, Miramax and the Weinstein Company. Many victims said that in order to get their big breaks, they would have to accept Weinstein's advances, and they felt that if they had spoken out before against Weinstein, that there would be some type of retaliation in the form of threats against their careers. A job with Weinstein was a privileged perch at the nexus of money, fame, and art. These accusations take many forms, including rape, sexual assault, and sexual abuse, and span as many as 30 years in the past. Weinstein's case has given birth to the Me Too movement, in which women across the world are finally feeling empowered to speak out against their abusers, especially in the working world. Many are utilizing this wave of female empowerment in order to speak their truths and tell the world just how sinister the industry can be for a woman who is simply pursuing a better life for herself.
Weinstein and his associates used non-disclosure agreements, payoffs, and legal threats to suppress their accounts, which resulted in very little journalistic evidence, and is why very few women have spoken out until now. Employees of the Weinstein Company have work contracts that state that they would not criticize it or their leaders in a way that could harm the business or an employee's reputation, and most of the women accepting payouts agreed to confidentiality clauses that prohibited them from speaking about the deals or the events. One of these employees has been quoted as saying, "If Harvey were to discover my identity, I'm worried that he could ruin my life." Some of the most notable women accusing Weinstein of harassment include Rose McGowan, Ashley Judd, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Angelina Jolie. Lauren O'Connor's 2015 memo became the foundation for the movement to take down Harvey Weinstein. After investigation, it was discovered previously undisclosed allegations against Weinstein stretching over 3 decades, documented through interviews with current and former employees, as well as legal documents, emails, and internal documents from multiple companies he owns. Dozens of employees, both former and current, from assistants to top executives, knew about the inappropriate behavior that was happening while they worked for him, but only a few confronted him about the behavior. For more on this story, we'll throw it over to Caroline.
From an HR perspective, there are multiple issues associated with the Harvey Weinstein scandal. First and foremost, there is an obvious imbalance between male and female coworkers. In the case of Harvey Weinstein, this is apparent in his treatment of his female coworkers as he demanded sexual favors in return for roles in films and different opportunities in the film industry. If these women did not agree to oblige his demands, he allegedly had them removed from certain projects and also dissuaded people from working with them in the future. Weinstein also enforced a code of silence and enforced work contracts that stated that employees of Miramax and the Weinstein Company were not permitted to leak any information regarding Weinstein's inappropriate advances. In Hollywood, there are very few policies in place around how cast and crew members are treated in the workplace. There were even fewer policies in place 30 years ago when this allegedly all began. So any policies that were in place were completely ignored by Weinstein and his staff. His HR team were neglecting to do their job to protect those working for Weinstein, as there was an overwhelmingly amount of normality surrounding the inappropriate advances that Weinstein was making to his female coworkers. Thank you. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Caroline. Now over to Caitlin.
Thanks, Brandon. Unfortunately, as of 2018, 38% of women said they had experienced sexual harassment at the workplace. This is a very high percentage of women in the workforce who are being put in miserable and uncomfortable work conditions and are therefore losing passion for their jobs. Many of these employees are so miserable and uncomfortable in their workplace that their performance on the job is drastically diminishing, therefore affecting not only their productivity but the company's productivity as a whole. With that being said, this is an issue that needs to be addressed immediately and taken care of using preventative measures both on the employer and an organization side as well as on the employee side. One method to preventing these awful situations is by improving the selection process on the employer side. As employers interviewing potential employees, we need to be concerned and aware of potential employee behavior just as much as the qualifications they possess for the job. We as employers should implement a zero-tolerance policy for any kind of harassment or misconduct at the workplace. It should be made known that these behaviors will not be tolerated and that disciplinary and legal action, if need be, will be implemented if these actions are occurring. We as employers should also encourage our employees to speak up if they are in uncomfortable situations with single or multiple coworkers, and that there be an anonymous hotline for the company in place that an employee can use to address the issues they are facing without risking potential backlash. In terms of what us as employees can do is first and foremost, when we are first applying for a job and receive an interview, we want to use the interviews we would get from our potential employer as a way to evaluate them as well. We as employees should take the opportunity we receive when we get interviewed by organizations as an opportunity to study our potential employer. While they are getting to know us as potential employees, we should be getting to know them as a potential employer and really evaluate how they speak of their staff and how they act towards us from the very beginning. By being more aware of who the interviewer is and how they treat you and speak of the company, you could be minimizing the risk of entering yourself in an inappropriate and unhealthy work environment. If you as an employee is currently facing sexual harassment at the workplace or any type of misconduct for that matter, you need to speak up and address the issue to your supervisor. If the actions persist, then a higher level manager and the local authorities should be addressed of the issue immediately. In the case of Harvey Weinstein, he dismissed and removed people from projects who did not comply with his inappropriate behaviors and requests. It is important that we go to the labor board when faced with this type of injustice at work. Accepting payoffs, as many did in the Harvey Weinstein case, simply puts the victim at risk of further harassment, if not potential danger. It is imperative that if you are aware or have an inclination that someone is experiencing harassment at the workplace, that you come forward and speak to someone that could help. Nobody should be put in uncomfortable and inappropriate situations at the workplace. We go to our jobs every day to work and should feel comfortable and at our best while at work. Therefore, sexual harassment and workplace misconduct needs to be actioned against immediately. Reporting to you live from Hollywood, I'm Caitlin Hobbs. Back to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Caitlin. As the Me Too movement gains traction and visibility, more women are coming forward with their own experiences of sexual misconduct. Scandals such as this have forced human resource representatives to reevaluate their company policies and how they're enforced. Harvey Weinstein is set to appear in court for sentencing in May of 2019. He could be facing up to 25 years for his actions. Join us next week for more on this story.